In this video, we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. I've broken this down into a step-by-step process that we're going to follow for all three questions that we're going to go through today. So let's start with our first question. The first question is x squared plus 10x plus 4 is equal to 0. And our first step is to divide all terms by the coefficient of the x squared term. If we look at our question, we can see that we don't have a number in front of the x squared, which means that there's an invisible 1 there. If we were to take every single term and divide it by the 1, it wouldn't change the question. So we can say that that first step is already done for us. We can skip it in this case. So our next step is to move the c to the other side. And just as a reminder, this question is currently written in standard form, which means we're working with ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So when I say move the c to the other side, I'm just looking at that positive 4. And we're moving it to the other side by subtracting 4 from each side. That's going to turn our equation into x squared plus 10x is equal to negative 4. Then we can move on to our third step, and our third step is to complete the square. And as a reminder, to complete the square, we're taking our b, which is 10, we're dividing that 10 by 2 to give us 5, and then we take the 5 and square it to give us 25. And I'm just going to put a box around the 5 because that number is going to come back into play later, but right now what matters is the 25. And I'm going to take that 25 and I'm going to add it to both sides of the equation. So what that's going to turn into is x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to negative 4 plus 25. So we've added the 25 to both sides of the equation. Next, we get to factor the perfect squared trinomial. And this is why I put this 5 in a box, because the perfect squared trinomial factored is just x plus 5 squared. So whatever number you have in that box is the number that goes in here. Now that is equal to negative 4 plus 25, so it's equal to 21. And our last step here is to solve for x and simplify. So right now in our equation, we have x plus 5 squared is equal to 21. In order to solve this, we're going to square root both sides. On the left side, that will cancel out my squared, so I just end up with x plus 5. And on the right side, just remember that the square root of 21 has a positive and negative answer. So to account for that, I'm going to make this positive and negative square root of 21. And then finally, to isolate x, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, which gives me x is equal to positive and negative root 21 minus 5. So if we're looking for our two roots to this question, they would be at x is equal to negative 5 plus root 21, as well as x is equal to negative 5 minus root 20. Awesome. Let's look at our second question. So in our second question, we do actually have a number in front of the x squared term, which is the negative 3. We're going to start by dividing all terms by that negative 3. That's going to change our problem into x squared minus 4 over 3x minus 5 over 3 is equal to 0. So it's instantly introduced fractions into this problem, but that won't make anything harder because we know how to deal with fractions. Our next step is moving c to the other side. We're going to do that by adding 5 over 3 to both sides, which is going to make our question x squared minus 4 over 3 x is equal to 5 over 3. Then we can look at completing the square. So we're taking our b term, which is negative 4 over 3, and we're dividing it by 2. And remember, when you're dividing fractions, it can be helpful to turn your 2 into a fraction as well. So we're going to turn that into a 2 over 1. And then we're going to keep the first term as negative 4 over 3. We're going to change the division sign into a multiplication sign, and we're going to flip the fraction into 1 over 2. And then we're going to multiply that and get an answer of negative 4 over 6. Both of those are divisible by 2, so we can then change that to negative 2 over 3. And then we're going to take that negative 2 over 3 and we're going to square it, which is going to give us an answer of 4 over 9. So that will make our question x squared minus 4 over 3x plus 4 over 9 is equal to 5 over 3 plus 4 over 9. And again, I'm going to put this number in a box because it's useful for our next step, which is to factor the perfect square trinomial. So our perfect square trinomial in factored form will be x minus 2 over 3 squared. And on our other side, we need to get a common denominator in order to add those two fractions together. So we have 5 over 3. To get the common denominator of 9, I'm going to multiply this by 3 over 3. And we're adding 4 over 9 to that. So this works out to 15 over 9 plus 4 over 9, which will turn into x minus 2 over 3 squared is equal to 19 over 9. Our last step then will be to solve for x. So same process here, we have x minus 2 over 3 squared is equal to 19 over 9. We're going to start by square rooting both sides. And remember, on our left side, that's just going to cancel out the squared. So it's just x minus 2 over 3. And on the right side, it turns to positive and negative square root of 19 over 9. Then we can go ahead and add 2 over 3 to both sides to get our x alone. So we get x is equal to positive or negative square root of 19 over 9 plus 2 over 3. So our final answer for our two roots of this equation is x is equal to 2 over 3 plus the square root of 19 over 9, and x is equal to 2 over 3 minus the square root of 19 over 9. Let's use this process to solve one more question. So our last question is negative 2 over 3 x squared minus x plus 2 is equal to 0. And we're going to start by dividing all terms by the negative 2 over 3. When we do that, so we're dividing by negative 2 over 3. Remember, what you are really doing here is you're multiplying by negative 3 over 2. So we're going to go ahead and multiply every single coefficient by negative 3 over 2. That's going to change our equation to x squared. Negative x times negative 3 over 2 is positive 3 over 2x. And then for our last term, we have a 2 times negative 3 over 2, which will just cancel out the 2 on the bottom and turn this into a negative 3. So our c term ends up being a negative 3. Then we can go ahead and move that negative 3 to the other side by adding 3 to both sides, which is going to turn this into x squared plus 3 over 2x is equal to positive 3. And then we can go ahead and complete the square by taking our b, which is 3 over 2. We need to divide that by 2, which, remember, dividing fractions, it's just like multiplying this. So 3 over 2 times, and we're flipping that fraction to 1 over 2, which will give us 3 over 4. And I'm going to save that by putting it into a box for later. And then I'm going to take the 3 over 4 and I'm going to square it to turn it into 9 over 16. And the 9 over 16 is the number that I'm going to add to both sides, turning this into x squared plus 3 over 2x plus 9 over 16 is equal to 3 plus 9 over 16. Then I'm going to go ahead and factor the perfect square trinomial, and that just turns into x plus the number in the box, which is 3 over 4. That is squared. And in terms of adding my last two numbers over here, I need to get a common denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 3 and multiply it by 16 over 16. And then that will let me add 9 over 16 to that. So our equation turns into x plus 3 over 4 squared is equal to 48 over 16 plus 9 over 16. And then in my next line over here, I'm just going to add those two numbers together to give me 57 over 16. And then finally, I need to solve for x. So right now, we have x plus 3 over 4 squared is equal to 57 over 16. We're going to square root both sides, which will turn this into x plus 3 over 4 is equal to both positive and negative square root of 57 over 16. And then finally, I'm going to get the x alone by subtracting 3 over 4 from both sides, which turns this into x is equal to positive and negative square root of 57 over 16 minus 3 over 4. So our final answers here in terms of our two roots are x is equal to negative 3 over 4 plus the square root of 57 over 16, and x is equal to negative 3 over 4 minus the square root of 57 over 16.